Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the franchise.
You've got to come back with me.
Where?
Back to the
franchise.
This is our second ever episode of Back to the Franchise, and as a sequel to the last episode, we are doing a sequel to last episode's movie, Star Wars: A New Hope, with Star Wars Episode 5, The Empire Strikes Back.
Sequels.
Yes, the sequel to end all sequels, this movie pretty much is. The sequel that everyone will talk about for the rest of time when they're discussing other sequels. Anyway, but let's introduce ourselves. I am Timothy Glenn.
I'm Tanner Wilcox.
And we are your hosts for Back to the Franchise, a weekly recap movie podcast where we will be going back to each franchise in anticipation for a new release. In this case, we are building up towards the Mando and Gorgorian. Nope. In this case, we were building up to the
In this case, we're building up to the Mandalorian and Grogu.
Yes, the Mandalorian and Grogu, which I just saw a new trailer for today. I'm looking forward to it, but we talked about it last time, so we don't have to get into it. But yes, each Tuesday we will be diving into a new episode in a franchise. We will be doing Star Wars first. So last week we did A New Hope. This week we are doing Empire, and so on and so forth until the new release date. So we are doing The Empire Strikes Back today. Release date came May 21st, 1980. We were just a twinkle in our father's eyes back then, Tanner.
Yeah.
We were still in production, as they say. The film was released
pre-production.
Pre-production. The film was written by Lee Brackett and Lawrence Kasdan and directed by Irvin Kershner. Just so you guys know, we will be going into spoilers for this whole episode. So if you're one of the 5 people in, I don't know, Indonesia who hasn't seen Star Wars Empire Strikes Back, you can listen to this episode, sure, but it will be out of context. So just fair warning. But before we get into it, Tanner, do you have any personal history with this movie?
I think this was honestly the first Star Wars film I watched. When we were talking about, I think last week maybe I talked about, I talked about how my cousin had a VHS copy of this, and that kid in my Boy Scouts troop that had every single Star Wars toy and the Millennium Falcon playset, and I was like, bro, I got to figure out what this world is. And then my cousin had Empire on VHS, and I think I watched that. So I think it was quite a while before I even realized that the original trilogy was like a trilogy.
So did you not have like any of the context?
Not at all. But even as like a 7-year-old boy, I didn't really need the context. I was just like, oh, cool. Spaceships and lightsabers and fighting and Carrie Fisher.
Pew, 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 pew.
Yeah, there was. I mean, I don't remember the first time I like watched the movie, but.
I didn't get into this as far as my history with it the last episode, and I probably should have. I probably saw this one the same time I saw the first one, sometime in the late 90s when they released the special editions. But Star Wars was a big thing, not so much in my family, but in my town, because I grew up in San Anselmo, Kern County, which is where George Lucas also lived for my entire childhood. And the Skywalker Ranch was very close by. So it was like a cultural thing in where I lived. Like even today, there is a statue of...
You grew up with like the George Lucas fame, the Scream fame. I'm a little jealous.
Like... He had a son named Jet. He still does. I don't think he died. But like Jet was like the childhood celebrity. It was weird to have like a kid celebrity in town, right? You know, like everyone knows like, oh yeah, I know Jet. You know Jet. I never met him. We didn't go to the same school, but you heard things about this like kid celebrity. It was really weird. Only because he was the son of, George Lucas.
Yeah.
Anyway, so Star Wars was kind of, it was very close to home. I never met George Lucas either when I lived there, even though apparently like he was known to frequent the TCBY in my hometown all the time. That was just his hangout.
A what?
You don't have TCBY?
I don't even know what acronym you're saying. TCDY?
TCBY, the country's best yogurt.
Never heard of it.
Okay, well maybe it was a regional thing, but it was an ice cream place, like soft serve, like, and I would get these like giant parfaits. They were delicious. But George loved that place, and he would go all the time.
No.
I never ran into him. I think the one time I got close was I was in like the car, and I was being a brat that day. And I was like, I don't want to go in the store. Mom, you get my ice cream. And she was like, whatever, Tim, you're disabled and I love you. I'll do whatever you want. And so she goes in and he's there, and she asks for his autograph on like a napkin, and he's a nice guy. Like, he's totally fine with that kind of stuff. So she got his autograph. I don't know how true that, I mean, I would have been really young, so that memory might be a little bit, but she swears that she met him that way. And I think I was in the car at the time. So if I wasn't just a little shithead, I could have met George Lucas.
Oh, Tim, what a missed opportunity.
Yeah. Well, I don't even know if I would have been old enough to know who he even was, but
We don't have any cool celebrity stories from my hometown, except that John Wayne back in the day used to have a vacation home in the town over from mine. And back in like 1968, my grandma was in the supermarket and my aunt was an infant at the time. And she was walking through the
Mhm.
supermarket and he stopped her and he was like, "Ma'am, I'd just like to tell you have a beautiful baby." And she almost fainted in the supermarket aisle. But that's, probably the highlight of her life.
Just talking about it on her deathbed, like her family surrounding her, and they're like, "Thank you
I,
so much for raising us," and she's just talking about.
she's like, "That one time that stud John Wayne told me I had a beautiful baby. And I said, I'll throw this baby away if you want to make another one, John Wayne."
She gets the she gets to the pearly gates, and like God's looking at her resume of like life, and the first thing on there is met John Wayne at a grocery store, complimented baby.
Yeah, her 60 plus years of marriage and her 4 children, like those are all just secondary. Met
Yeah.
John Wayne at the
But
top.
but it is cool when that kind of thing happens and you're not expecting it, you know?
But yeah, my friend's little sister, they live in like just outside Spokane, and she was on the same like basketball team as Sydney Sweeney when she was in high school. And I'm like,
Oh.
"Ugh, I don't have any stories like that. There's just nothing cool.
No, we
Nobody
poisoned
nobody
everybody
cool came from
around
my
us, so no
hometown,
one. Yeah, we actually probably prevented them from being famous, if anything. So
for sure.
anyway, so yeah, Star Wars, pretty big deal. I guess we got a lot off track there, but who cares?
Oh, that's what we were talking about? No, John Wayne?
Yes, we're here talking about Star Wars, Tanner. Do you remember? This is a Star Wars
Yeah.
podcast, on a Sydney Sweeney's high school basketball career podcast.
What's going to get more listeners, Tim? Probably Sweeney.
Honestly, Sydney Sweeney. Honestly, let's stop right now and just that's a niche and popular enough topic that we will get more listeners than what we're doing right now. We last left off, we were talking about how A New Hope was this ginormous success from every aspect of the spectrum, financially, in terms of awards, consideration, audience, adoration, everything. It was a huge hit. So, money talks, and Fox is like, oh, sequel. Is that what you did earlier? Sequel.
Sequel. It's almost like they got the Disney itch. And they were just like,
Oh,
oh, money.
what's that part from the producers where it's like, Tony.
But they just do it with
Oh, is
money.
it yeah. Oh,
What's
he just had a stroke.
Speaking of Disney and money, what's the scene from Toy Story where Andy's playing with the toys and he like sets them all up? And I think it's Mr. Potato Head is the villain, and he's gonna like rob. I think it's Toy Story 2. It's like the opening, and he's gonna like rob the cardboard box. It's the bank, and he's like, I'm here to rob the bank, and then he goes, money, and like, whenever I hear of Disney creating a new live action or like another sequel to something, that's all that plays in my head. They should just use that sound bit from Toy Story 2. That's just money.
Yeah, Fox, $ eyeballs all the way. George Lucas, however, was not as enthused about directing. I mean, he had definitely, as the creator of Star Wars, thought out a lot, farther than anyone else had. But the first movie was not fun for him to make.
Could you imagine making your like pet project, then have it literally almost kill you?
Yeah.
And then
Yeah, he went through.
and then you're walking in the street and someone is talking about Star Wars that you just poured your entire life savings and your soul into, and someone walks by and was like, I didn't really care for it. You know what? It's just
Yeah.
not my cup of tea. I don't understand what the hype's about. I'd walk off a bridge.
Well, thankfully, George Lucas has a stronger constitution than you. But he
Thankfully,
knew,
I haven't made any movies that can be judged by the public.
nor should you.
No, I'm not strong enough for it. Don't come after me.
So George Lucas was smart enough to know that he maybe needed some time away. And he obviously, he was also rolling in dough in terms of all the money he made. And he's also going after these other ventures at the time. He's further developing ILM, Industrial Light and Magic. He's also moving towards eventually making an Indiana Jones movie or producing it with Steven Spielberg, So he's got a lot of things in the back burner. So at this point he's thinking, well, it wouldn't be the worst thing in the world if I can direct this one. I'll just give them my outlines and they'll figure it out. So he looks around for other directors. He gets Irvin Kershner, who I didn't know at all. Like, I was looking at his filmography. I don't know any of his movies before this.
Me either.
But he does go on to, obviously this definitely helps his career. After this, he does Never Say Never Again, which is like the unofficial Sean Connery James Bond movie. And then eventually does RoboCop 2, unfortunately. But nothing before this, I don't know at all. Before he got Kershner, he considered Alan Parker and John Badham. Parker didn't get this, obviously, but because of that, he ended up actually directing Fame from 1980, in which came out a week earlier than Empire Strikes Back. Yes, I haven't seen the original Fame. I've seen the remake with Kay Pennebaker.
God.
Yeah, not good.
No. Sorry, Kay.
She's my favorite Pennebaker, though, if we're splitting hairs, but
what? We have to segue now into the fight over the Pennebaker sisters because you don't like Danielle?
No. We don't have to do that. I saw.
First of all, I'm gonna steamroll you right now. Sky High. That was my first delve into Mary Elizabeth Winstead. I love you. Danielle Pennebaker, great character. Hippie princess goddess powers. She was like a good poison ivy. Loved it. Stuck in the Suburbs, one of the only Disney Channel original movies from the mid 2000s that was great. Love it. And you know what? She was the only good part about the Friday the 13th 2009 remake. I'm just going to throw that out there too.
I haven't seen Sky High.
What?
I missed it.
Tim, you missed 2000. What was it? 2005.
We can't keep going on these segues.
We can also get in there because it's a Mary Elizabeth Winstead.
I love Mary Elizabeth Winstead. Okay,
A+. That's all I'm going to say. Go back to it.
Okay. Anyway, Alan Parker made Fame, and then John Badham did do a big movie before he was considered for Empire. He did Saturday Night Fever, which I love that movie. I would have hired him just for that.
I was barred from my segues. I can't go into John Travolta now. We don't
talk about like old dogs. So George Lucas wanted to detach himself a lot from this production. He even considered giving the rights or selling the rights to Fox for profit. But he was too emotionally attached to all of the stories in his head, all the characters, so he just couldn't do it. Even though he wasn't, in the driver's seat of this movie, he couldn't go forth with it. And thank goodness he didn't, because for him at least, it ended up being hugely beneficial that he stuck with the franchise for so long. Because he had to spearhead the franchise himself, he had to also put himself back into further financial risk funding the movie. Used $12 million of his own profits from the last movie, and he had to get an $8 million bank loan from B of A, Bank of America. And it was the biggest bank loan you ever took out.
Like $12,000 for a car. Also, could you?
Yeah,
can you walk into just like a regular bank now and say, I want to make a movie, and they'll give you a loan for that? Or are studios just like, Self-funded with their own I just can't imagine in this day and age walking into my Bank of America and being like, "Oh, I'm gonna make this movie. I need $12 million, please." And they're just like, "No, leave. Sir, please leave."
Well, it helps if the movie you made before that was the most profitable movie of all time.
Well, sure. And if you walk in there with the credentials and like the evidence of like, here's what I've done in the past, also here's who I am, here's my studio backing. I'm just saying, do banks now do like loans for films? I don't think they do. I think you just finance it through like a studio or through their own financial department. I don't know.
I think their official stance is no, you're just going to lose money on this movie. That's what you do.
Especially now.
Yeah. So official development of this movie started in August of 1977. So just a few months after A New Hope was released. Original title was Star Wars Chapter 2, back when he wanted to get ahead of, the John Wick title of naming his movies.
Inventive.
Yes. He also wanted to outsource the writing duties. Aside from his outline of the plot, he wanted to hire people to write the actual screenplay. So he first went to a sci-fi writer by the name of Lee Brackett to write the screenplay. Lee Brackett, which a name I recognize not because of her, but because of the sheriff character in Halloween, Lee Brackett.
Stop. I literally was like, I think I know who that is.
Yes.
And then in my head, I'm like, no, it's Annie Brackett that I know. And then I was like, oh, Annie Brackett's from Halloween.
Yep. And her father is Lee, the sheriff.
Shut up. Look at us. Look at us connecting the dots.
So he hires Brackett to write the screenplay, but he knew that she had cancer. So, and she ended up finishing the first draft in 1978. And then sadly, she passed away just a few weeks later.
From Michael Myers?
Actually, Sheriff Brackett doesn't die in the movies.
In the Rob
he dies
Zombie remake.
in one of the wait, is that Brad Dourif? Is it the Brad Dourif version? He dies?
Yes. I think he dies in Halloween too. Maybe he doesn't. Annie dies.
No, I know Annie definitely dies in Halloween too. I remember that. And while we're spoiling Halloween movies on Not Halloween podcast, Sheriff Brackett, the original actor, came back for Halloween Kills a few years ago, and that one died. Her original screenplay had a lot of things different in terms of characterization, but the plot mechanics were basically the same, that of there being a Hoth, ice battle, and Luke goes off to train with the Jedi Master, and, a confrontation with Vader at the very end, the climactic lightsaber battle. But there were some things that were either dropped or tweaked. They had to work around some things. We went in a little bit into Mark Hamill's car accident last time that caused him to have unfortunate face injuries. And I think last time you said that you thought he was even a different actor in this movie. The first time.
As a child.
No, yeah, sorry. I should have clarified. One thing that I thought was interesting was that Lucas said that he would have, if God forbid Mark Hamill had not made it through that accident, he would have replaced Luke Skywalker with a totally different character, not recast the role. But no, thankfully, they were able to, also explain it away with his whole encounter with the Wampa in the ice cave. I also looked up that in pre-production, George Lucas told him that he was tinkering with the idea of Leia being his sister, and Hamill was not he was a little disappointed about that possibility, which ended up being real.
Well, and then I'm like, do you think he was disappointed because they'd already kissed in the first movie? Come on.
Yeah, he just wanted to keep making out with her behind the scenes and not have to think about it too much.
Well, if she kept making out with everybody on set in between her Quaalude doses, that's her own fault.
Oh, jeez. We're going to be pissing off a lot of families of dead people right in this episode. Anyway, so this draft was a lot different in terms of character dynamics. The first draft of A Sister of Luke was incorporated through Brackett's screenplay, and it was not Leia at first. It was a whole different character. And there was even more of a exaggerated love triangle between Han, Luke, and Leia. Which thank God they didn't do that. I don't want to watch a Star Wars movie that has like, sexual tension, and I don't need to see that in a Star Wars movie.
It has all the unwanted trysts of a Twilight series. Yay.
No, thank you. Han's like, you know what I am. Say it out loud. Say it. You're a smuggler. Okay, anyway. There's also a little subplot of Han going on a solo adventure to find his stepfather, big powerful figure in the galaxy or whatever, that ended up getting cut. They were also going to have Lando Calrissian be a clone from the Clone Wars, which also thank God they didn't do that, because that would just have been, I mean, they mentioned the Clone Wars in the first movie, but they don't really do much, setup for it. Like, that would be a whole explanation. Anyway, so the tragic passing of Lee Brackett made Lucas say, well, now I kind of have to, I can't hire a dead person, so now I kind of have to write it myself. So he gets back into the writing, chair. He also hires Lawrence Kasdan to develop it further. Kasdan is the only other one besides Brackett who actually ends up getting a screenplay credit on the movie. So yeah, they go through a few drafts on that one. Last time we went into a lot of casting, and I imagine going forward that we're going to be doing, our casting section is going to be very big for our first episodes in a franchise. And then as it goes on, be smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller. Because the casting director's job at this point is just copy and paste.
Well, and if it's a good franchise, you're going to have principal characters returning. We don't need another Bryce Dallas Howard coming in the third film of a franchise.
You just have Twilight on the brain right now, don't you?
For those of you who don't know, that's an Eclipse reference.
So they wanted to get the principal actors under contract. They gave Mark Hamill, Carrie Fisher, and Harrison Ford offers of up to 4 film contracts. Hamill and Fisher were the only ones who ended up taking it. Harrison Ford declined it for a lot of reasons. He wanted to be killed off in this movie, and this would be the first of many times he has to be killed off. And he also wanted to, push himself to do better than he did last time, which I don't think there was anything wrong with his performance last time, but whether lights a fire under your ass. Mark Hamill did a lot of preparation for this movie. He spent 4 months training for it. He did karate, fencing, kendo for all of his stunt work. I think there's only one shot in the whole movie that is not his own stunt, and it's him going out of the window in Cloud City at the end. And, it paid off. He looks pretty good in this movie.
Dude, Mark Hamill got jacked. And I would also be disappointed if I spent all that time working and he only gets one sleeveless shirt scene in the swamp.
Well, you got to know that swamp on Dagobah is like swamp ass weather. You can't be wearing sleeves ever. Yeah. I can't believe Yoda wears like a robe.
I'm just saying, the boy did a lot of work. Let him take his shirt off.
Let him flash it. They should have told, Kumail Nanjiani should have told them that when he was shooting Eternals. He's like, look at my freaking body. I did this. Why am I not taking off my shirt?
He's like, really? A costume that goes all the way up to the neck? Do we have to wear these?
Yeah, so he did pretty well leading up to the movie. Good for you, Mark, getting that body in shape. Carrie Fisher also, again, as I said before, signed up a contract for 4 films. She wanted to come back with a stipulation that she was not, a damsel in distress, which she really wasn't in the first movie. I mean, she does have to be rescued technically, but, holds her own. And she wanted to make sure that continued on in further films. In fact, the first screenplay that Lee Brackett wrote, George Lucas was a little bit dissatisfied with how some of the characters were portrayed. And one of the facts was that Princess Leia seemed a little bit too much like a damsel in distress.
Yeah, I agree with that. I'd say that she's still, we talked about that a little bit in the first episode too, how she was from the get-go kind of like a pretty feminist icon and held her own there, which I think kind of continues throughout the series. I also find it surprising that Carrie Fisher put in her contract that she needed at least 7 more Swiss milkmaid hairstyles in Empire, because I feel like that was really, really prevalent.
Oh, so that's why she was yodeling on set all the time.
No, that was the Quaaludes.
So, yeah, just going down the list, they also convinced Alec Guinness to come back to play Obi-Wan in a few scenes as the Force Ghost, as we would become well acquainted with. He originally did not want to come back because his eyesight wasn't great at the time. It was getting worse. And being around bright lights was a challenge for him. Thankfully, I think he only shot his scenes in one day, though. And it was all on a blue screen. And it was actually the day that they wrapped production. So he probably filmed that and then went to the wrap party immediately after. Like, yeah, we did it.
All the challenges that everyone else had for like months and months and months, and the sicknesses and the sweats and the behind schedule. And he was like, great, 2 hours. Here we are. Where's the food?
That's probably why Harrison Ford wanted to be killed off. He's like, man, these Force ghosts get treated better than us. But Alec Guinness got a lot out of it. Again, he got 0.25% of the film's profit grosses. In fact, deal, according to my information here, that deal was arranged. George Lucas wanted more of him in the movie, and he only got him to accept the role in the first place by saying, okay, we'll give you less to do and we'll give you part of the profits. Like, I get more money for less work. Great.
Yeah. Why would you not take that?
No.
Half a day's work and he probably got millions for it.
Yeah. Of course, also coming back is Anthony Daniels as C-3PO. He was also a little bit reluctant to return. He didn't feel like he deserved a lot of credit for his participation in the first movie. In fact, the studio initially tried to, obscure the fact that C-3PO is not an actual robot.
I'd like drag. If you were like, hey, everybody, I booked this role. It's a movie that, well, maybe while filming, they didn't think was going to be huge, but to have it come out and be like, that's me, I'm C-3PO. And then you have a studio exec that's like, no, it's a robot. There's a real robot.
They didn't say he was a robot, but they also intentionally did not correct people from thinking that he was,
He was not getting any press publicity or any Letterman interviews for that.
No, and he's the real unsung hero of the cast of these movies too. But he came back and he also got a higher salary for himself. So even though he's not a main, principal character, he got his due. Also coming back in a really uncomfortable outfit is Peter Mayhew as Chewbacca. The only note I have on here for him for this movie is that he got really sick during the carbon freezing sequences on Bespin, because, the temperatures in the room got really, really high, and he's wearing a really hot furry costume.
And there's a lot of steam in those. I feel there's a lot of steam in this movie in general.
There was steam in the 80s and everything. It didn't matter if you were watching, Out of Africa or Star Wars. There was just steam everywhere. Also reluctant to return is David Prowse as Darth Vader, because he was like, well, the hell? I did a whole movie, I recorded the dialogue, and they dubbed over me with some other guy, but he came back anyway. James Earl Jones returned too, but he actually declined getting a credit, and I don't think he was credited as Darth Vader until the next one, at least not for a while. He said he considered himself special effects, which, I mean, it's okay, James. Like, give yourself some respect. You're one of the best voice actors to ever live. Like, you can take some recognition.
Yeah, I appreciate him being like humble in that aspect, but also, come on, because he is, if not like the most iconic villain voice in film history, it's up there. And yeah, maybe that is technically like special effects work, but you could say the same argument for any animated film, and I wouldn't consider principal cast members special effects. So way to be humble, James. Also, take the credit and take that 15 G's for 6 hours of voice work. Good for you.
Yeah, I have not made that much money in that short amount of time. Well, I have, but it was way different and way harder. Anyway, that's a joke, by the way. that's not.
Tim only makes that kind of money vertically. No, it's horizontally. I fucked up the joke.
And I know you're editing this, but leave that all in. Not on our little guide here is one actor that is also unrecognized, Kenny Baker. So Kenny Baker, thank you also for coming back to play R2-D2, even though Tanner forgot to write you up on the guide.
I left him off because he was a returning principal cast member, and there's just nothing interesting about him. Sorry, Kenny.
What was that, Tanner? You hate little people?
Oh, okay. Well, if you're going to try to trap me into this, Kenny Baker, you're just so excellent. There's nothing I could say to better better my opinion of you or to slander your name in podcast history because you're that good. Thank you for being R2D2. You're iconic. We love you.
Going forward, I'm going to try to dial down the controversy a little bit. Okay, and then, of course, now we get into the new casting. So obviously the big one is Billy D. Williams as Lando Calrissian. We talked about last time that Billy D. Williams was a option that they were considering for Han Solo before they decided to go a different direction with it. But I mean, he's still basically playing the same character here.
Yeah, they're just like, okay, Billy, here's a rundown. The character is a Han Solo, but he gets a cape.
The cape was a big selling point for him, I'm sure.
Yeah, for sure. That was I read that somewhere that Billy D. Williams only was like his interest was piqued in the character when they said that he had an Armenian last name and he had a cape. And Billy D. Williams said he sounds like a quote pretty cool guy. And I'm like, oh, that's all it took.
What's that Bruce Willis quote from Friends? I'm a cool guy. I'm a love machine.
You know what? You're a neat guy.
Oh, it's a neat guy. Thank you. Okay.
Oh yeah. And then Ross comes in later. He goes, and I too am a neat guy. And I too am a love machine.
I love this quote that we found from Irvin Kershner. He said he described Billy D. Williams' performance as Lando Calrissian as, quote, the fantastic charm of a Mississippi riverboat hustler, unquote. That's just like perfect.
And then I read some like when the reviews came out. I know we're not in the review section of the episode, but when they were talking about like cast reviews, somebody had put out there that Billy D. Williams seemed too basically like too much like himself, and it threw them out of the feeling of the film. And they were like, he brought too much jive to the role. And I was like, what a racist comment.
I disagree. I thought he brought, I mean, it is a lot of jive, but it is the right amount of jive,
Yeah, I think it's just like what you need. Like it's what made his character unique, and it felt like he was like an authentic representation of the character, and I thought it was great.
Yeah, Billy D. Williams is cooler than the other side of the pillow, as they say.
Do we have any other principal cast additions? But I guess it would just be La Yoda, right?
I'm not done talking about Lando.
Oh, sorry, Billy D.
Well, no, actually, I was going to mention Yaphet Kotto among the other options they were considering for Lando. That was the one that stuck out to me. Do you know Yaphet Kotto?
No.
He was Parker in Alien, the first one. That's what I know him best as.
Oh, okay.
And then perhaps his biggest role as far as recognizability, he was the Bond villain, and I think Live and Let Die. Yeah. Okay. Live and Let Die came out in 1973, and I don't know if you guys have seen his death sequence from that movie, but it is one of the most ridiculous deaths ever put on screen. Like he like inflates and blows up like a balloon. It's so funny.
Oh, I'm looking forward to it. I think I talked about this last week, but I'm currently rewatching all of the Bond movies from start to finish, and I haven't got to that one yet.
Yeah. So there you go. I mean, I don't know what Billy D. Williams' filmography was like before. I don't know how famous he was before he did Star Wars. Yaphet Kotto, though, had done some genre work too before. So he would have been I don't think he would have been as good, but he would have been an interesting fit. And then getting into a couple of his new side characters, we have Boba Fett, another really cool character who, in fact, had his first appearance not in this movie and not even in the Star Wars Holiday Special, but his first appearance was in a parade in San Anselmo, California, my hometown, before the release of this movie.
Oh, before people knew who he was?
Yeah, so he was just like a green stormtrooper, I guess, to them at that point.
I was like, it seems weird to include him in the parade then, but whatever.
Yeah, but he was a conceived character already, so they just put him in the parade. Anyway, but yes, his first official appearance in media, though, I guess you could say, is the Star Wars Holiday Special. We didn't talk about that one last time. We could have, because it was a little bit closer to the release of A New Hope than Empire, but coming out in 1978. Tanner, are you familiar with the Star Wars Holiday Special?
Oh, I sure am. I can't say that I've ever seen the whole thing. I don't know if I've seen the whole thing. And I feel like
they don't release it anymore.
No. But I don't know that I've even like tried to look up like a YouTube version of it or something. Because I know that it's pretty famous just in its own regard for being like terrible.
Yes, most of that is from the plotline of Life Day, which because they don't have Christmas in space, because that would be
yes.
That would beget a whole lot of questions, So it's all about like Chewbacca wants to go home to celebrate his life day or something to that effect. I don't know. And it's really corny.
I just want to know the backstory on how that was pitched and like who sat down with Mark and Harrison and Carrie and was like, look, guys, we have to do this. It's going to be huge. And they were like, did anybody read it and was like, oh, that's a no for me?
Well, we decided to spare the audience by not including the holiday special as a full episode on its own. So I didn't do much research on it in that regard, but I can imagine they all were not thrilled to be there. But anyway, yeah. So Boba Fett has his first appearance in that special on TV. It is an animation though, his segment, and the original conception, I found this interesting for the character, was as the man with no name from the Clint Eastwood Dollars trilogy.
Oh,
Kind of see that vibe, you know?
yeah, interesting.
Another big character introduced in this movie, though with certainly a lot more to do, is Yoda, who was played by Frank Oz, aka Miss Piggy.
I'm a Miss Piggy stan, so I do know Frank Oz.
Yeah, you can definitely hear it. Like when you hear Yoda and Miss Piggy, you could tell it's the same voice. Frank Oz was recommended to George Lucas by Jim Henson, actually, the creator of the Muppets. I think, right? Am I okay to say that he was the creator of the Muppets?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay, cool.
He was also, I believe, he was like lead puppeteer for them as well.
Right. So Lucas wanted Jim Henson, but then Jim Henson recommended Frank Oz. So now we have Frank Oz. Yoda was also conceived a bit differently originally. He was almost a slime creature, and even weirder. And this is actually even weirder for me to imagine. He was originally almost going to be blue and not green.
Oh, see, you hear like weird details like that, and you think like, oh my god, how could they? But had like Yoda always been blue, I don't think it would have affected my life. For some reason, I think I just prefer him green.
I mean, I prefer him green too, but like if I imagine like the swampy Dagobah, I'm not going to expect a Smurf to show up.
Yeah, the blue's just not it doesn't track.
No. And then last but not least, in a cameo appearance, we get the first look at Emperor Palpatine, aka Darth Sidious, in this movie. Tanner, the version you watched, I assume you watched the one with Ian McDiarmid, who plays the Emperor throughout all of them, right?
Yeah. And although not like the original version of this that I watched when I was a kid, that VHS copy, I think the Emperor was just like hooded. I don't think you ever saw a face.
You see a little bit. So it's a way different design. In the original theatrical release of this movie, the Emperor was played in costume by Elaine Baker, who, fun fact, was the wife of the special effects artist Rick Baker. He just put his wife in a hood and a little bit of a mask and told her to move her head around a little bit.
What?
Yeah. And then she was dubbed over vocally by an actor named Clive Revill. So that was the voice you heard. They also put little cat eyes. I actually just Googled before we recorded this what Palpatine looked like in the original movie, and he has got these cat eyes over his eyes superimposed, so he's not entirely human.
Oh,
not that Palpatine is very human anyway to begin with nowadays, but so yeah, interesting to note. I do hope we went in last time. We talked about how they're gonna supposedly put the original version of the first movie in theaters next year for the 50th anniversary. I'm just going to mention really quick, I would love if they did that again in 2030, I guess, for this one. I would love to see the original version of Palpatine and others.
Yeah, I'd like to go back and see those too, just to compare them.
Yeah. So filming began on this one in March of 1979, so just about a little over a year before Empire would come out. They decide to film the Hoth scenes first, which is pretty much their only, I guess you could say, on location set for the movie, not in a studio or whatnot. So it's the only real outdoor challenge they have to go through. So they go to Finse, Norway. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. To stand in for Hoth as the snow planet. They went specifically to the Hardangerfjorden Glacier. Tanner, did you put that in there just so you make me pronounce that?
No. I mean, I'm glad that you were worried about pronouncing Finns correctly when the next line was the hard and jargon, schmargen, fergen, shargen glacier.
You added at least a few Sharkins in there, but yes.
Yeah, I don't think there's any shargans actually. I believe it is the Hardangerjokulan glacier. I don't have the yeah. We're gonna leave it at that.
I'm just gonna call it the Inca Katukakana Na Glacier.
Katinka Inga Bogovna na.
Apologies to Norway. So they started there in Norway, and it's interesting because they started A New Hope filming in Tunisia in the desert, and they start filming in this one in a tundra setting. And in both instances, they got just dumped on immediately. Because last time we talked about how there was a big rainstorm in Tunisia. This time they get like the worst snowstorm in half a century.
You know, and I also think it's interesting that Mark Hamill was kind of the only person that was required to be on location for both. Like the Tatooine scenes in Tunisia, he was the only principal cast member that had to be there. I believe that on the Hoth scenes, he was also the only person that had to be there because he was the only one shooting outdoor stuff. And then the Rebel base scenes on Hoth were studio. So
Yes.
Carrie Fisher and Harrison Ford didn't have to be there. But I think, I know that Carrie Fisher did come to Norway because she just wanted to see like the production and she wanted to be on set for it. And then I think Harrison Ford also joined later. Again, they weren't required to be there, but they just came. So funny that Mark Hamill is like the only person that's like, oh, you get to go to these far reaches of the earth and film in these cool spots, and it's going to be the worst experience of your life both times.
Yeah, can you imagine if he had to also go to like a just filthy swamp for real next?
Well, yes, they were going to. I know that they scouted locations for Dagobah, and they were going to use like Africa and Scandinavia, but they were looking for like a real jungle, and then that got axed pretty early on, I think. But imagine, yeah, they're like, hey, we're gonna send you to Norway, and then also we're gonna dump you in this jungle swamp.
Yeah, well, they ran afoul in Norway, at least in terms of the weather, because they ended up using a lot of their budget there. So I'm sure a lot of the decisions later on in production was because of how hard it was to film in Norway.
Yeah.
But budget specifically was raised from 8 million to 22 million, just for Norway. It was supposed to take 3 weeks, but it took 8.
Wow.
Yep. But, I mean, it looks great for it, like the fact that they actually filmed in the snow. So the rest of the filming went to Elstree Studios in London, England, which was, interestingly, also the location they were filming just before this, The Shining.
Oh, and isn't it the Shining sets that like mysteriously burned down?
I don't know about mysteriously, but it did burn down part of the set, and that did cause production issues for Empire later on because they didn't have access to like a whole stage, I think, afterwards. So yeah, thanks Shining Ghosts. Thanks Kubrick. The Shining actually opened the same weekend as Empire Strikes Back, interestingly enough.
I wonder if it like crushed at the box office. And they could be like, thanks, that's for burning down our set, bitch.
Just punching down. Well, they're both considered two of the greatest films ever made, so, who cares? So this film production was, as we alluded to earlier, very hard on a lot of the actors. Mark Hamill, in addition to having to shoot in a goddamn tundra, had a lot of difficulty later in the story because he's not interacting with any human beings. He's interacting with a puppet, and a droid the whole time, and not getting any kind of dialogue feedback from another human being.
Oh, he pulled an Ian McKellen on The Hobbit. Not to go into another Tanner segue, because I do that a lot, but I just know that that's a story that I think is kind of like sad in a way that, Ian McKellen had a lot of fun filming Lord of the Rings. And then when he came back for The Hobbit, it was a lot of CGI work, and especially in An Unexpected Journey, he's with 13 dwarves that aren't there. So all of his scenes are just sticks with tennis balls, and he's supposed to react to them, and then they add in all the dialogue. I just know that he had a hard time with that as well.
Actually, the first thing I thought of similarly was Who Framed Roger Rabbit with Bob Hoskins, who had to consistently imagine that there were these animated characters all around him as he talked to them, and it actually really damaged his psyche. afterwards. Carrie Fisher also went through a lot of difficulties on this production. She was allergic to a lot of the makeup that she was using, and she got sick. She dropped a lot of weight. She was at one point only 85 pounds, and she was working 12-hour days. She, as you had mentioned, she was addicted to painkillers and that kind of stuff. Are you just to talk about Carrie Fisher in general? Are you familiar with a lot of the hardships she went through in the 80s?
No, not specifically. No, I'm just more familiar with her partying with Stevie Nicks all the time in the 70s. Stevie, two great ladies, two great cocaine addicts. I love them both.
Did you ever see Postcards from the Edge with Meryl Streep?
No.
That's basically based on Carrie Fisher. It's based on her memoir, but they changed the name. I haven't seen it either, so I don't even know what I'm talking about, but I just know that.
You know what? I'll give it a goog. I'm gonna watch it because all jokes aside, I think that Carrie Fisher is like a really like remarkable and underrated actress. I think she gets a lot of credit for like Princess Leia, but I think she's a really phenomenal person.
Yeah. And she went through the ringer.
Yeah.
One thing I wanted to mention about this production in particular is, when people think of Empire Strikes Back, they think of not only one of the greatest sequels ever made, but they think of one of the greatest twists in film history being, the old news, but that Darth Vader is Luke Skywalker's father. And they knew that they had a big, wallop on their hands on set. In fact, they tried to keep it really under the radar when they were even filming it. When they were filming it, they had David Prowse, who was in the costume, say, Obi-Wan is your father, just to keep, people from, talking about it. So the only people who actually knew the truth were Mark Hamill, who was obviously, of course, reacting to it, Irvin Kershner, the director, and then the producers of the movie. Nobody else knew that this is what was really going on.
Wow.
But it's kind of like a pre-internet, because nowadays you really have to do that kind of stuff. But that back then, that wasn't really a thing.
See, and I could never be a leading man with a plot twist film because I would immediately get on my phone and be like, "You'll never believe what the script said today. Don't cast me in Avengers because I will tell you who's coming back and who's gonna die."
Well, funny you mentioned that because they actually did, when they gave the scripts for this movie, and I'm sure for those movies too, they gave fake scripts, or scripts without those moments, so they took a lot of care into concealing the secret. Funny story, it didn't end up really mattering because, well, I mean, it mattered, but in 1978, David Prowse completely blew the lid off on that in an interview that he did before the movie came out, that Vader is Luke's father.
Oh no, like a real one? Like he really actually blew it?
Yeah, no, he didn't blow it, but he really did say that in an interview. I think it was done in Berkeley, California. And he said like, oh yeah, and the next one, it's going to be a really heightened situation at the end because Luke has to fight his father, who's revealed to be Vader, and it's going to be really emotional. There's been some contention about what actually happened, what he actually said. He said that he was, joking or whatever, he wouldn't have actually had access to that information at all. But it is interesting to note that he said that, but because it's the 70s, that doesn't really circulate very well. So it was still kind of a surprise for most people. Nowadays, if someone says that even in a hushed room, everyone knows. Anyway, so this was a very fraught production. George Lucas had to, of course, take out a lot of loans, and he had B of A riding his coattails and, visiting the set and refusing to increase the loan. He wanted to get $28 million for it at the end. So this was a movie that was also, again, like if this movie didn't pay off for Lucas, he would have been screwed again, even though he was already super rich.
Yeah.
So the final budget, though, does come in at $30.5 million, which, in 1980 money, I guess, is a lot.
Well, and what was the original projection for the film was what, like $8 or $11 million or something?
I think it was 8, yeah.
So that's quite an increase in going over budget.
More than triple. But they got to the finish line and they finished the movie through all of it. But they were way behind schedule, like several weeks, more than a month behind schedule by the time they actually finished wrapping on the movie. Production obviously lasted for several months afterwards. Executives didn't see the cut of the film until March of 1980, so that's about 2 months before the movie's release. In the test screenings, last time we talked about in the test screenings that the original test screenings didn't go great because it was an incomplete movie. A lot of people thought it was terrible. This one, they knew ahead of time going into it that this would, be a big movie. But there were still some things that they didn't care for, like the Tauntaun special effects were, not super loved. And
I mean, even to this day, I think that the Tauntaun, which is funny because nowadays I think the Tauntaun is kind of laughable. It looks very like stop motion claymation kind of
Mhm.
special effects, but I would think for the 1980, it wouldn't have been that terrible. So it kind of surprises me that
No,
everybody was outraged over it. But
no, I'll take a Tauntaun that's like a puppet over whatever they do at the casino planet of Last Jedi.
oh yeah, my God.
So, and then there was the line that Han has at the end, his last line where he says to Leia after she says she loves him, "I know." Lucas did not like that scene in the test screening. Everyone else did, but he did not. He didn't think that was how Han would do it. But suck to suck.
Which is crazy because I believe that's an improvised line from Ford, right?
It wasn't in the script, yeah.
And it's
And
become, cemented as such a like famous moment in Star Wars that it's funny that that's like the one thing that George Lucas was like, I don't know, it's kind of out of character. I don't really like it when it's just like this huge moment now.
again, George Lucas is not the paragon of dialogue writing, so he can shut up.
Well, yeah, or probably like romance scenes.
And thankfully, Irvin Kershner was very encouraging of actors improvising to keep, the tone buoyant, and the flowing. So that's how we got that. Okay, so Tanner, now we've seen the movie. We're in 1980. We just saw the movie. Let's get into our thoughts. What was it like rewatching this?
Well, again, with the original Star Wars trilogy, there's not much bad you can say. With sequels, they got to be bigger and better than the predecessor. Better special effects, more action
Mhm.
in this one. Again, like I said, more Princess Leia Swiss milkmaid hairstyles. We love that. We love a braid. Uh, Harrison Ford, I think, has even tighter pants on in this film.
Mhm.
So there's really not a lot bad. I do think that, and we'll get into this too. I think like my critique with it is kind of the same that a lot of I think fans had on the initial release, that there is quite a tonal shift to the film. It feels a little darker, it feels a little like heavier. It is kind of the
Mhm.
first one where you split your characters into different storylines. Luke is doing his own thing and trying to look more into the Force, and so he's off on his own for a lot of the film. And then you have, kind of this side mission that Han and Leia are on, and they're also discovering their emerging romance. So
Mhm.
there's a lot of it that now I think is kind of tropey in like an adventure or a fantasy movie, but I think back then it was really revolutionary to have kind of those um split storylines, and to end the film on like a cliffhanger was a big deal. So I think it's great. I mean, I think I think the pacing of it for me is kind of slower than the first one, and it does lose kind of the charm and like fairy tale storytelling aspect of it. But I think it's
Mhm.
a deeper movie. I think you get more out of your characters with it. I think there's some pretty iconic moments in it, obviously. So
Mhm.
I think it's great. 10 out of 10.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, and I'm kind of glad that they didn't just go the same route with this movie as the last one. Like, I like that they took some chances in terms of the tone, and they didn't feel the need to just repeat what they'd done before.
Well, yeah, because I mean, that never works. And if you I don't know, I mean, with what was riding on this movie, like, if you didn't do something different and you didn't make it something that people wanted to see and wanted to see the follow-up of, then what are you really doing? Because
Mm,
you may have gotten lucky with the first one, but if you repeat that, you're gonna get boring really quick.
yeah. And this one does a pretty good job of, probably better than the first one, of getting you hooked in the adventure, because in the first one you have you have the boarding sequence of Princess Leia's ship, and you get a quick shootout between the rebels and the stormtroopers, and then you get a lot of sand, desert stuff for a while. Here, though, we get a whole, Luke rescue from the wampum and, Tauntaun stuff. And then you get a whole battle sequence on Hoth that's really creative with how they have to destroy these giant walkers. So I feel like the first act of this movie is a little bit stronger than the last one.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
If I am, though, going to start levying criticism on the movie, though, the second act for me on this one is a little bit weaker. This is, of course, where we get into Luke going to Dagobah and training with Yoda, but then also Han, Leia, Chewie, C-3PO on the Millennium Falcon, kind of, bumming around space, trying to get away from the Empire. That stuff of the movies, but particularly their storyline, I kind of forgot a lot about it because it's not that essential,
Yeah, and I mean, any part of a movie for me, like the Dagobah scenes where you're trying to build this connection, you're trying to master the Force. I find it any type of scene like that in any movie where you have a character who's struggling or training, especially maybe it's that training montages.
Mm-hmm.
They put me to sleep real quick. I'm just oh, I get it. Let's go. You have powers. You don't know how to use them. You're going to figure out how to use them eventually. Let's just get there.
Really, montages put you to sleep, even if it's scored to the Rocky soundtrack or something like that?
Never. An inspirational montage, I'm always here for. A fucking closet dress up chick flick montage, I'm always here for. There's certain montages that work, certain ones, when it's a sad, grueling, gray montage, I'm no, we get it, you're powerful, let's go.
Yeah. Yeah, I kind of feel the same way. I mean, it's good filmmaking still, and even though the plot isn't as interesting in the second act in terms of what's actually happening, it's still doing a really good job at character building and development. So on one side, you have Luke, wrestling with his insecurities and, his fears over the dark side and Vader. And the other side, even though the Millennium Falcon stuff, before I watched this movie, I couldn't remember which movie it was from where they went into the asteroid and stuff. But even though that stuff isn't super essential to the plot, they bookend it with really good character work between Carrie Fisher and Harrison Ford, Luke and Leia. Their early flirtation bickering stuff is fire.
Yeah, so good.
Yeah, it's a lot to keep you invested in the movie still. And then when the movie gets into the third act, once it gets to Cloud City, then it's perfect after that. I mean, and we can't really talk about this movie without talking about the, effectiveness of watching Luke fight Vader in that climactic scene. Not only is it, I mean, the special effects and the blocking and the stunt work is a little bit, aged, the part where Luke is fending off flying garbage from Vader,
Oh my God,
hold
the
up.
lag in that is crazy.
Yeah, it doesn't hold up great for someone who's an aspiring Jedi Master, but 1980, it's okay.
Yeah.
But otherwise, the tone of that duel, you feel it, and the moment where you do find out that Vader is Luke's father, I'll still watch that, and coupled with the pacing, the dialogue, the score, it still gives me chills.
Oh, every time. I mean, and even us growing up, we were children long after this movie came out. And I think we all probably knew that revelation before we even watched the movie, because it's just something you just grow up knowing that Vader is Luke's father. I don't know why.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I will still, you sit me down in front of that movie, you give me some popcorn, he says it, and I still jaw on the floor. I'm oh, what? Every time.
This is one of those movies that I cite as, if I had a time machine, I would go back to 1980 just to see this with a first-time crowd.
I would just love to be part of a crowd of people walking out of a theater after watching this for the first time, because that wherever they're going afterwards, they're just going to be talking about this. What's going to happen to Han? Oh my God, I never saw that coming. It just would have been so fun.
Yeah. None of it was very predictable. And in fact, I mean, George Lucas wrote a lot of the movie's lore as he was going, like the franchise, that is. He didn't make the first one knowing that Vader was going to be Luke's father. He definitely didn't know that Leia was going to be Luke's sister, but that's it. But this was a good revelation. Like it's a very big chance they're taking, a big swing, but I think it's a home run.
Yeah, for sure.
And I do love that you mentioned the Han stuff a minute ago, the cliffhanger ending with him. I do love that you leave a little bit unresolved. I mean, it was they didn't know for sure that this would be as big of a hit, and it wasn't as big, but it was. They didn't know it wasn't going to be a bomb. I guess they didn't know if they were going to make a third one. I guess they were kind of sure that they probably were, but I like that they ended up on a cliffhanger with him and not knowing what was going to happen. And you see the culmination of Han and Leia's relationship, their budding bromance, come to a crescendo as she professes her love for him. And then immediately after that moment, he's frozen. Like,
Yeah.
it's just it's some of the best, like chocolate giving and then taking it away immediately after. It's the only metaphor I can think of.
Oh, here you go. Oh, you want it? Oh, you can't have it.
You can't have it. Like like in terms of tragic storytelling, that's kind of what tragic storytelling is based on. It's like, oh, but it could have been this, and it's like, oh, my heart, it's great. One other thing that I wanted to mention for the review section of this movie, we talked a lot about John Williams' score in the last one, and he could have, and I'm sure he did use a lot of his old stuff, but what I didn't know before researching this movie was that the Imperial March, which is what we think of when we think of like Darth Vader walking around with his stormtroopers, you think of that sound when you think of just evil people doing evil stuff, wasn't in the first movie. It was made for this movie. This is the first movie debut of the da 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 da.
Well, if you're going to name the movie The Empire Strikes Back, then the movie has to have an Empire theme.
Yes. But he understood the assignment when he was tasked with scoring this movie too. Like, he knew that he had to, dig deeper and darker in terms of matching the tone of the movie.
Well, and he nailed. I mean, but he always nails it. He always understands the assignment. Him and Hans Zimmer, please.
Yeah, can't laud John Williams enough for his contributions to pretty much everything he touches. In terms of the other characters, we talked a little bit about Billy Dee Williams before. I do really like his presence here. Because before you had a lot of these, you have heroes on one side, you get the villains on the other side. You had Han Solo in the last one, who was, this kind of gray area character who was in it for the money, but you knew he was kind of a hero. He was going to be a hero. And I like how in this one, they introduce a character who not only... he's not a villain, but he does betray them to have a character this likable, actually go against them at some point.
But you know what? Those characters are always good for me. I like the kind of the ambiguous, like, anti-hero, and then they always have a redemption character arc.
Mm-hmm. One other thing about, as we're talking about new characters, that it's a little, since we're millennials, so we grew up with the prequels pretty much. In real time, that is. So looking back on this movie, the only thing that was a little jarring for me was seeing this portrayal of Yoda, where he's much less sage-like, especially in the beginning, much more like a cartoon character, like a puppet,
Oh, see, and that's interesting to me because I love the prequels, as I've said time and time again, and I will say, but I think it's interesting because in the Phantom Menace, they still kept the same puppet as Yoda. So when you have the scene of them in the Jedi Council, he is still the original puppet. And then it wasn't until Attack of the Clones that they made Yoda a CGI character. And I think that's a way you go from, episode 1 to episode 2, and you're like, wait, what? What happened? You go back and you watch these again, and you're like, oh, it's the antique Yoda.
You're right. I am doing a little bit of backwards retrospection, but I think what was more weird was seeing him as this kooky, impish old man versus the version of him that we know from the Jedi Council. He's not really like a prankster, whereas in this one, he's like oh, who's Yoda? I don't know who Yoda is. It's a really different portrayal than what we would eventually get.
For sure, yeah, he's very much more serious in the prequels and, I guess important. But, well, you know what? We'll chalk it up to his decades of being alone in the swamp.
Yeah, but for him, that's like what, a week? Because he's like 900 years old.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's definitely a subtext is that he's been isolated for a long time from anybody. So yes, I'm sure. I mean, I would go crazy if I was living there too. But it was interesting to look back on it with our 21st century eyes. He is a puppet, but he is much more Muppet like in his mannerisms. So that was
Oh, yeah,
definitely a transition to going back to have to experience it again.
for sure, yeah.
And I'm not saying I'm knocking it. It was just weird. Is there anything else you want to talk about as far as the actual movie goes?
No, I mean, I think we've covered the basics.
Okay, well let's all right, well let's get back into our history recap. All right, Tanner, we've seen the movie. We just gave each other our reviews of it. We just saw it. We're still in 1980. This movie, again, the first movie wasn't marketed very much at all to begin with because no one believed in it. This one was not marketed at all because last time it wasn't marketed very much at all. So they were like, well, let's just do it again. Same the last time, and people will have the lack of availability to see the movie because it's only released in like 126 theaters would make people want to see it even more when it was finally out there.
Well, and from like a conglomerate corporate America standpoint, it almost makes me so angry at the studio because they didn't believe in the first product enough to spend money on it. And then it made them so much money, but they were like, oh, well, we can do this thing. We know people are going to watch this movie because they loved the first one. So all we're going to dump money into is making Star Wars cereal and merchandising toys. So they're like, yeah, we'll do ad campaigns with Coca-Cola and General Mills, and we'll get licensing rights to make all these toys. Also, there's 1/8 of a page in your local newspaper promoting it. That's it.
Mhm. It's interesting you bring that up because that reminds me there are a lot of people today who, when they make a new Avengers movie, say, for instance, where it's like a sure thing, like people are gonna see it. Like there are some people I've heard say, like, just don't market it at all. Just tell us the Avengers is coming out on this day and we can go see it because you're still gonna make all the money in the world, you know?
Yeah.
So there's definitely a vocal minority who would rather they not do that kind of marketing, and go back to when they did this kind of stuff.
Yeah, and I mean, part of me agrees with I hate when a movie has 4 different trailers come out. Like, give me one
Uh,
trailer, give me a teaser trailer, and I'm good. But by the time you do 3 or 4 different ones, it's like, I've already seen everything in the movie. Like,
Pretty much,
it
yeah.
almost ruins the mystique of it.
And you hate to see when they add the one thing that they shouldn't have revealed, like John
Yes.
Connor being a Terminator in the fifth one. That should have been in. I mean, that movie was ass anyway, but it would have been better to experience that in the theater and not on your TV in between commercials.
Yeah.
So it is weird though that you couldn't really do this now. Like open your movie, your big blockbuster movie in only 126 theaters. It's kind of like a pre-internet thing that you could only do then because today if you put it in 126 theaters, then, only a certain amount of people can see it at the beginning and then everybody else who hasn't seen it gets spoiled, just by going online.
Well, for sure. And I mean, part of me misses those days because I think it made release things like more fun. Like, and I understand that there was a marketing ploy, we're going to do a limited release. It'll make tickets harder to get. So we'll have more
Mhm.
weekends where people are filling theaters. We'll have people more, some people will get to see it. They'll come out, they'll talk about it. Word of mouth will spread. People will want to see it more. But I miss when you had to wait for things. I miss my midnight releases for Harry Potter books and my standing in line camping out for movie tickets. Like, I love the
Mhm.
convenience of nowadays, but also with online buying your movie tickets online, it's just not even an issue anymore.
But they also benefited from having they had a climate of movie going that would allow these movies to run for weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks on end. Like the studio wanted a 28-week run, which is 7 months, I think, or more. Which, nowadays, if your movie is in the top 10 for 5 weeks, that's a huge success.
If you're profitable after like the third week, it's a good thing.
Yeah.
Um, I think the last movie that I can remember in like my own history of even running more than like months was, I think, Titanic in our local theater
Mhm.
ran for probably like 8 months.
Yeah, and it's only movies don't really stick around that way anymore, and most people with these big franchise movies have to see them immediately because they run the risk of, getting
Uh,
spoiled if they don't.
yeah.
And the ones that do stick around for a while, like right now as we record this, I think the two movies that have been in the top 10 up through February for their, several week run are Zootopia 2 and Avatar: Fire and Ash. Um, a couple of big, wide appealing movies that people aren't so much worried if they get spoiled for those ones. Like it's not really a huge thing. But that's the exception these days. Most movies don't do that. Even big movies. A lot of them are in the top 10 for maybe like 6 weeks and then they're gone and the next one comes out.
Yeah.
But not this. Oh yeah, it opened to 6.4 million on opening weekend, which I guess would be high for how many theaters it was actually in. And considering, 1980 money, domestically it made 181, somewhere between 181 and $209 million, which, according to my super handy inflation calculator I use online, today would be 714 to about $824 million today. So, and that's just domestically. So again, it's a huge success. It ends up being the highest grossing movie of the year domestically. Tanner, can you guess what the next one was?
I believe it was Dolly Parton's 9 to 5.
Yes, of course, 9 to 5.
Oh, big fan, big fan.
Which is, again, like, can we go back to the days when like these funny musical comedies were, billion-dollar grossers?
Yeah, I could not imagine like a 9 to 5 style movie. Most of them aren't even released in theaters anymore. Like they're just streaming
No.
movies. But I just can't imagine a world where, yeah, a 9 to 5 musical is going to be $1 billion hit.
Yeah, so 9 to 5 comes in at number 2 with $103 million, which is at least $80 million away from Star Wars. And then the next few on this list are Stir Crazy and Airplane, the original Airplane movie. It's funny they're all comedies because, in fact, as I was reading up on this movie on Empire, a lot of the worry for releasing such a dark movie at this time was they thought that audiences would want to be seeing more comedies due to the recent economic recession that had hit, which did kind of hold true for a lot of these movies. I mean, it's crazy to think that 3 of the top 4 movies back then were comedies.
Well, I mean, when the country's tanking, what do you want to see? Do you want to see crime dramas or do you want to see Dolly Parton try to poison her boss with her girlfriends?
I love that movie. I want to watch that now. So yeah, Star Wars worldwide makes in 1980, or I guess probably partially in 1981 as well, $401 million, which, again, according to my calculator thing that I use, so don't take this as, the answer. This is $1.6 billion today. Huge grosser again. It didn't do as well as the first Star Wars movie, so this one makes on the high end $209 million unadjusted for inflation. The last one made $221, so it is a little bit of a drop off. But I think that's probably in terms of the fact that the first Star Wars movie had longer legs at the box office than this one did. This one was probably a little more front loaded with people seeing it earlier and not as many seeing it later or again and again.
Yeah.
In fact, they probably were a little bit more bummed out about this one in terms of the ending. So they weren't feeling as encouraged to go back and relive it because, it's darker.
Yeah, and I mean, you don't get a resolved ending, so it's like, why would you want to watch it over and over?
Right. Just give us the next one. So after all the re-releases over the years, the movies made about $550 million worldwide. I'm not adjusting that for inflation because that would be ridiculously hard to do. But so yeah, I just touched on slightly the response to the movie. A lot of people were, a little bit surprised of how dark it was. I mean, they think Star Wars and they think fun space romp, based on what the first movie was, which, I mean, had its moments, sure, of darkness, but a lot of people, when this movie was first released, critics and audiences included, missed the levity of the first movie, I guess I should say. But it was, like, even though it wasn't as much of a critical success or critical darling, I guess I should say, at the time. It was still recognized, on the awards circuit. It was still nominated, not as for as many Oscars. It was nominated for 4. Well, technically 3. One of them was a Special Achievement Award, so not nominated. They just gave them the award for visual effects. It was nominated though for art direction, but it lost to Tess, which I'm not familiar with.
I don't think I am either.
Yeah. And then John Williams was nominated for original score again. I guess they found enough original about it to nominate him. But he also lost this time to Michael Gore for Fame again.
Fame keeps popping up.
Again, that was a very popular movie.
My mom and her sisters were, teenagers when that came out, and I remember they loved Fame. My aunt watched Fame like 4 times at theaters.
I want to live forever. So the only Oscar that it does win competitively is sound. It wins the technical award, I guess, that these blockbusters can win. Again, more of a muted response from people at the time. Before we get into the legacy of the movie, though, we talked about last time that New Hope went through these edits in the special editions. Again, this one did too, but I felt like watching this again, it wasn't quite as distracting as it was the first time.
I would agree. I think a lot of them were edits where I think it made more sense to have them. Like, I know that he edited a lot of like the Cloud City stuff, so your backgrounds are a little more detailed, or it shows more of like a backdrop of this city than just like having sky there. I think there was only one time where I think it's when Han and Leia are approaching Cloud City. They have like escort ships come up alongside them outside the window of the Millennium Falcon. Those look terrible. That's kind of the only time where I was like, ugh, this is bad. But for the most part, I think everything that was added into this one felt more natural. It looked better. And it wasn't as like jarring as superimposing things onto the Tatooine shots. Those are just hard, I think.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's hard when you roll into Mos Eisley and it's just wall to wall CGI animals. Whereas this one, there's not that much opportunity for. I guess they could have maybe done something on Hoth, although Hoth is a tough environment for a lot of these animals, I'm sure, to live in. So there wouldn't be a bunch of them running around.
Yeah.
And Dagobah, the Dagobah ones that do show up, they're still not CGI. I guess they wanted to emphasize the isolation of that place. So yeah, it was the first time out. It was definitely the creatures that ruined it for me. This one doesn't really have those, so I was more okay with it.
Yeah.
They also, I should mention, in the 2004, they re-released it on digital or DVD, I should say. And at this point, they added the actors who would eventually play these characters later on. So they get Ian McDiarmid to play the Emperor for real. So they record his face and they put it over the one they did originally. So you have the original Emperor as we know him today. And they also had Temuera Morrison, who played Boba Fett, and not until Attack of the Clones in 02, to voice Boba Fett. So now when you watch the movie, most of us, when we watch the movie today, we hear, 21st century Boba Fett as opposed to 20th century.
Well, I mean, does Boba Fett even have like lines in the original? Because isn't he only in Return of the Jedi in like the originals?
No, he's in this one. I mean, he is in this movie, but he doesn't have that many lines.
Okay, because he's in this one like following around Vader, but I don't remember.
No. They really filmed him. Yeah, he's really there.
Okay.
In A New Hope, they added him for the Jabba scene.
Yes.
When he wasn't originally there, but in this one he was, and he has probably 4 lines of dialogue in the whole movie. So he's not really even a pivotal character, really. He's just kind of there to be Vader's, bounty hunter stand-in, or Jabba, to emphasize the fact that Han has a bounty on his head. That's kind of all he's there for. And he takes Han at the end of the movie. That's basically it. So yeah, this movie changed a lot, probably more in terms of less so in terms of the actual movie being changed and edited, and more so in terms of how we approach this movie today, or have approached this movie since. I'm sure it was jarring for them in 1980 to experience Star Wars as this darker examination of human psyche and stuff like that. But nowadays, it's like considered the greatest Star Wars movie ever, and to say nothing of the greatest sequel ever made.
Yeah, it's weird how kind of perception changes, because I think even if you ask one movie critic today, they're all going to say, have like heavy praise for this movie and have heavy praise for its like impacting legacy. When it first came out, it was pretty like mixed, and then even the audience reviews that were mixed. So it's interesting how that public opinion changes too.
I generally have the perception that people's perception of a movie will only improve with time because, the people who don't like it will eventually stop talking about it. And the people that do like it will keep talking about it. So
Yeah.
eventually everything gets better over time, usually, unless it's like, the birth of a nation. But, but so part of me doesn't surprise me, but at the same time, it is crazy how nowadays it's considered even better than the first movie. I don't want to go into like what we think is better, because we're going to rank these at the very end once we do Mandalorian and Grogu. And plus, that's like 3 months from now, and our opinions could even change by then. So, we won't get into that specifically, but it is crazy to think of how this movie has almost like subsumed A New Hope.
Yeah, I think
Go ahead.
I was just to say, I do think that Empire is probably like the most like famous of the Star Wars movies. And if you ask people like, oh, what's your favorite Star Wars movie? The majority of people, I think, always say Empire.
Yeah, and I'll challenge that a little bit. I think watching this movie again, I mean, it's an amazing movie, but I do think that on the whole, when people think of Empire, they think more in terms of, the twist, the finale, versus the whole rest of the movie,
Correct. And I challenge that too, because Empire is not my favorite movie. Out of the original trilogy, it's definitely A New Hope.
But yeah, I mean, it is interesting that like I think if we're comparing these two movies, I think Empire is more moments, like amazing moments, and A New Hope is more of a complete film, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay, well, Tanner, we did it. We struck back at the Empire.
Oh gosh. Okay, that was rough.
I don't care. We're keeping it.
But we're here. Yep, we did it. We got through.
We've now done 2 of these things. But before we finish this episode proper, Tanner, is there anything that non-Star Wars related that you've been enjoying or not enjoying that you want to mention?
Oh, so our pop culture shout out time. Yeah.
Yes.
So since last week, I have watched Emerald Fennell's Wuthering Heights, which is a film of some contention currently.
Ooh.
Let me just go into this, you guys. So
Please do.
As a literary person and as someone who enjoys classic literature, the movie's complete garbage. If you are going into this film expecting a faithful adaptation of Wuthering Heights, look somewhere else. Go watch the 1992 one. Go watch the 1970 one. Go watch the 1953 one. Go watch the 1939 one. Because guess what? There's plenty of other places for you to get that faithful adaptation. I went into this movie wanting to hate it. I didn't think I'd like anything about it. I had heard nothing but I don't want to say I had heard nothing but bad things. I just heard that it wasn't faithful. And I thought, you know what? We're going to go into this and I'm just going to, whatever. I came out and I loved it. And the only thing I could think, it was one of those movies where by the end of it, it was the feeling of like laying in bed and pulling your covers up and just kicking your feet. Because it was a delicious film. And that's the only word I have for it. It was not faithful. It was not particularly enjoyable. It was uncomfortable. But it was great. I loved it. It was great. I thought that the costumes were not period accurate, which normally drives me nuts, but I loved them. Margot Robbie looked phenomenal in everything. But that being said, it's an interesting story because in Wuthering Heights in general, I think Kathy is a terrible person.
Yes.
She's whiny, she's selfish, she doesn't really like want to work for anything that she has. I think she's an awful human. And Heathcliff is just bad. Like Heathcliff is abusive and he's dirty and he's mean. And it's a film about people that are pretty non-enjoyable. but then for some reason their romance like saves them. But through this movie, I didn't really know who I wanted to root for because Kathy sucks. Heathcliff is a psychopath.
Mhm.
Nellie, I want to punch in the face because she just gives you that atonement level, uh, um, like fuck up, where she's just like,
Yeah.
oh, you've ruined these people's lives. Thank you for
Mhm.
that.
Mhm.
And then as far as the sexual content of it, you go into this movie with the promise that it's probably just going to be like this kind of horny, like smut version of Wuthering Heights. And even that, I was shocked. I mean, it was provocative, but not in like a sexy way. It was almost
Mhm. Sorry.
like uncomfortable and like viscous. There's a lot. Is that the right word? I keep thinking of Van
Viscous.
Helsing.
Viscous.
Yes, viscous. If there's one thing I've learned as a monk, it's not to stick your hand in a viscous material. Someone needs to call Margot Robbie that because a lot of the kind of sexual innuendo comes from like slug slime and egg yolks. And there's a really weird scene where she's at the dinner table and she's fingering this fish jello mold. It's just like it's all stuff that's inherently sexual, but it's not enjoyable. So it's horny in all the wrong ways.
Okay.
But as far as my review goes, it's pretty great. I loved it.
Okay, well, I'm looking forward to it. I've read the book in college. I didn't care for it in the sense that yes, like these characters suck, and it's kind of hard to spend so much time with them. I've
Yes.
only seen one adaptation of it. It was like the one from 2012 with uh, Kaya Scodelario, the Maze Runner girl,
Well, yes.
and that one I was okay. I didn't love it. So this is not a property that I adore, but maybe this will be the one.
I missed that one. I think the two that you should go back to if you want to is the Ray Fiennes 1992 one is good,
Hmm.
but Ray Fiennes is always good. And
Of course,
then
always.
there's like a 2008 Tom Hardy version that I've seen, which is less good. I mean, people love Tom Hardy. I don't, but
I don't know if I see that. So yeah, Wuthering Heights came out on a Friday the 13th this year. So I was watching Friday the 13th that day, all day. I watched part 5, part 6, part 7, and I even went to the theater to watch part 2. That's my pop culture shout out. I was just all
really,
Friday'd out. Yes.
did you watch the 2009 remake with the superior Panabaker sister, Tim?
Oh my God. No, that was, look, like I basically pick up, I can't watch them all in one day because there's so many. So I usually just pick up wherever I left off last time. Last time I watched the first 4. This last week I watched 3, and then I hadn't seen they were playing the first one in theaters too, but I had seen that in theaters before. So I just went to go see the second one in theaters. Um, so yeah, I probably watched the Panabaker one of the last couple times. And I'll get around to it again, I'm sure. But I love this franchise. I mean, none of them are very great movies, but boy, are they fun. I'm a huge slasher fan, and I think this is probably the best franchise to binge in terms of long running movie franchises. Because when it gets bad, it's not like offensive. It's just bad, and
Yeah,
you move on.
it's just fun.
Yeah, it's fun and bad. Like, and I watched like number 5 is awful. In tone, it also doesn't even have Jason Voorhees in it. Spoiler alert, technically. And then the 7th one, I also really don't like. That one's a slog. And that one has a freaking teenage psychic girl fighting Jason Voorhees with telekinetic powers, and it's still a slog for me to watch. I was just watching it. I was like, this would be better if it was like 11 in the gang, and the Stranger Things team fighting Jason.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of things that are. What is the one that has Corey Feldman?
4.
Yes. So the cabin that he's in that movie, the one that like
Yes,
Corey
right.
Feldman. I don't know if he lives in it. So I just always go back to the episode of Parks and Rec. Do you
Yep.
know where I'm going with this? Where
I
they all
know
go out in the
exactly where you're
woods.
going with this. Yep.
And I'm just like, oh my God, that's Corey Feldman's house in Friday the 13th. And then
Yeah,
really the more prominent incident there is it's the same place where Donna gets her Benz keyed. My Benz.
they use that house a lot in filming. I think Pumpkinhead was also filmed out there in the 80s.
Oh wow.
Okay, well, so yeah, Tanner, thank you so much. This has been great. I loved so far watching these movies. So far, we've watched 2 really good ones. we probably won't be able to say that for too much longer. It depends on how we feel about the next few coming up. But so far, great movies to recap.
Yes, I've enjoyed our time together.
Yeah, so next week we will of course be going in order. We will be going with going with episode 6, Return of the Jedi. So be on the lookout for that. We will be posting episodes of this podcast every Tuesday. So if it's the Tuesday that this podcast came out for Empire, next Tuesday, mark your calendar. Jedi.
So if you guys didn't get that, it's going to be every Tuesday. So if you're listening on Tuesday, the next Tuesday, well, you'll have another episode.
Yes,
that's where Tim was going with that.
Yes, we understand. She was in the shower.
Were you in the shower?
I can't wait until we do Legally Blonde movies. Okay, anyway, so yes, thank you so much for listening to this. You can get in contact with us. We have a email address. Ask us questions at our email address at questions@backtothefranchise.com. Ask us whatever you want to talk about, our movie thoughts, anything, what kind of cheese we like the best. We will talk about whatever you want us to talk about. But we're within reason. And I don't want to talk about, like the war.
Tell us about the war. Any one of them.
No, it's fine. But until then, you can get in contact with us in other ways. I'm on Letterboxd hugely. My handle is TGMacman, TGMACMAN. And Tanner, where can they find you?
I am on the gram, everybody. Tanwill10. You can find me.
You can also find me at my house, but I will not be giving you that address. Thank you guys so much for listening. We look forward to seeing you next week.
See you next week.
Bye.